The June 14th, 2011 meeting of the Monroe County Legislature will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
President Adair.
Here.
Ms. Andrews. Mr. Antelli. Mr. Barker. Mr. Baroth. Mr. Beebe. Mr. Cassetti. Mr. Colby. Mr. Daniele. Mrs. Draw. Mr. Eckel, Mr. Esposito, Mr. Gamble, Mr. Gamina, Mr. Haney, Mr. Hanna, Mr. Hyder, Mr. Howland, Miss Kaylee, Mr. Lee, Mr. Lightfoot, Mr. Monero, Mr. McCann, Mr. O'Brien, Dr. Quattro, Mr. Rocco, Mr. Tucciarello, Mrs. Valerio, Mr. Yolovich.
Please stay seated. I would like to introduce Ms. Gail Marshall, Chaplain of the Monroe County American Legion Post, Grease Post 468, who has been invited tonight by Legislator Beebe.
Let us pray. Father, we come before you as a nation of celebrating June 14th, Flag Day. May we be mindful of our American flag, that it has been protected over the years by our brave men and women of the armed forces. We ask you for your guidance in the direction of our choices as we share our time and talents of leadership. May the God of hope fill you with joy and peace in believing that you may abound in hope by the powers of the Holy Spirit. May the Lord bless you and keep you in the palm of his hands. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be with you forevermore. Amen.
Ms. Marshall, on behalf of the Monroe County Legislature, I'd like to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Legislator Willie Lightfoot will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Legislator Lightfoot. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You have received the copies of the Journal of Day 6, May 10th, 2011. Without exception, the journal stands approved as submitted. There's a hearing loop in place tonight to assist those who are hearing impaired. Anyone requiring assistance should inquire with the clerk's office.
If you have a cellular phone, pager, or other electronic device in your possession, we would request that you silence them for the duration of the meeting. Thank you for your cooperation.
Legislators, the referrals submitted to the legislature for the next committee cycle are in your folders. At this time, I would like to introduce Mark Quinn from our Parks Department. He is going to introduce tonight the plant of the month. Mr. Quinn.
Thank you. Our plant of the month this month is Buddleia, which is butterfly bush or summer lilac. A really nice plant this time of year. It draws wildlife like almost no other summer shrub. You plant these in your yard and you're bound to have butterflies. If you plant the red ones, you can get hummingbirds. It's a very tolerant plant. It blooms for a long time. All it really needs is a full sun. It takes a little bit of water when you're establishing, but after that, they're really, really tough. And they'll bloom from basically midsummer till first frost. Comes in a number of very nice colors. Dark purples are the most common, but there's also whites, yellows, pinks, and reds. Appropriate for Flag Day, probably our best collection in the Parks Department is in the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, a very nice collection. It's a little early blooming this year. Normally it's about the 1st of July, but it's been an early spring, so they're in bloom now. And if you want to get some and put them in your yard, great plant for the yard. Very tolerant plant.
Thanks, Mark. This evening there are several proclamations scheduled. Madam Clerk.
Please come forward. Also, County Executive Maggie Brooks, President Jeffrey R. Adair, and Legislator Mary A. Valerio. Since its establishment in 1983, the Blue Ribbon Schools program has honored both public and private elementary, middle, and high schools for their exemplary achievements and academic standards. The Blue Ribbon Award is the highest award a school can receive from the United States Department of Education. It is awarded to schools that have proven to be academically superior or have shown dramatic gains in student achievement. This recognition is given to 300 schools out of the approximately 400,000 public and private schools nationwide. In 2010, Florence Brasser Elementary School, part of the Gates-Chili Central School District, was awarded the honor of being a nationally recognized Blue Ribbon School in the high-performing category. Once a one-room schoolhouse in 1854, Florence Brasser Elementary has grown and become one of Monroe County's finest public elementary schools. Under the leadership of building principal Timothy Young, the school students and faculty have soared beyond expectations to meet the high standards of the Blue Ribbon Program recognition. Principal Young attributes the extraordinary success of his school to the hard work and commitment of teachers, students, families, and the surrounding Gates-Chili community. Both past and present students have worked hard to make this award a reality. There has been a 97% recorded attendance for students and teachers for the past few years, a focus on small class sizes, and a spirit of caring, individualized education for all children. Therefore, we, Maggie Brooks, Monroe County Executive, Jeffrey R. Adair, Legislator and President, and Legislator Mary A. Valerio of District 3, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, June 14, 2011, to be Florence Brasser Elementary School Day in Monroe County, and congratulate Principal Young, students and staff of Florence Brasser Elementary School, and the Gates-Chili Central School District on receiving this prestigious honor. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. We're very privileged to have this award. This is a reflection on the hard work that our staff and our students every day in Florence Brasser. You may not realize this, but Business First just came out with the school ratings. 154 elementary schools and then 8 county, including Monroe County. Florence Brasser for the second year has been one of the top 10 schools in that selection. With that said, if you look at the free and reduced lunch percentages of the other 9 schools, the top is 14%. We have 33%. So that is a reflection of the hard work that we do every day for the students at Florence Brasser. And I thank you for this time. Thank you.
Would Judith Ranaletta please come forward? Also, County Executive Maggie Brooks, President Jeffrey R. Adair, and Legislator Mark J. Cassetti. Over the past 35 years, Judith Ranaletta has played a significant role in the lives of so many students at Greece Athena High School. Her musical talent and role as vocal music director have served as a shining inspiration to countless high school music students and residents in Monroe County. During her time at Greece Athena, Judith directed an award-winning show choir. The group was even named Best in the Nation in a British documentary filmed in the United States last year, which featured a musical sensation from the popular television show Glee. A capstone for Judith and her choir this year was a 6-night run of Andrew Lloyd Webber's The Phantom of the Opera. The performance held at the Athena Performing Arts Center completely sold out with nearly 10,000 people in attendance. Judith is known for encouraging her students to always strive for their best. She has continually instilled a drive in them to never give up and to remain committed to achieving their goals in life. Judith has helped launch the careers of many musical performers, including Broadway star Donna Lynn Champlin, Jason Ostrowski, dance captain with the 25th anniversary tour of Les Miserables, and Broadway performer Kevin Green. Judith's love of music and performing began at an early age, and that passion has been carried throughout her life. The legacy for a love of the arts Judith has created in our community is truly something to be proud of. Therefore, we, Maggie Brooks, Monroe County Executive, Jeffrey R. Adair, President of the Monroe County Legislature, and Mark J. Cassetti, Legislator of District 5, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, June 14th, 2011, to be Judith Ranaletta Day in Monroe County, and congratulate Judith on her recent retirement and wish her all the best in her future endeavors. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. This is truly off the cuff. I just realized I was speaking, but that shouldn't be a problem. Maggie, thank you particularly to you. Our acquaintance goes back many, many years. We first met when she was doing the Noon at 10 show and was always so, so supportive. You know, we never know where life is going to take us. Having been trained as a performer, I had no intentions of going into education. And lo and behold, 35 years later, I'm retiring and am so grateful for such a blessed career. There was a celebration a week ago last Sunday. My husband, Judge Ninfo, in fact, was the MC and did a fabulous job. But it was so rewarding to see so many, not just my present students, but students from all over the country come back, students who have their own careers and are performing all over come back to celebrate that. In a time when the arts are truly being affected by cuts in budget, the music, the arts are what really continue to inspire our youth. And just two short stories. A mother, the fourth of her children, as one of my freshmen right now, said to me, you know, Judith, you've been blessed with many stars. You have now taught 4 of my children. None of them are stars. But what you have given them is a lifelong appreciation for the arts. And for that, my husband and I will forever be grateful. The other, and that meant more to me than I can even describe. The other short story I want to tell you, and it, again, is about the arts. The Athena Show Choir has taken 7 European tours. From the very first one, it became very obvious to us that music, truly cliché as it is a universal language. I will never forget performing in Luxembourg Gardens in Paris. In the pouring rain, we were under a gazebo. It was an hour-long performance. It was our first on the tour. And the kids said to me, Ran, are we really going to perform in the rain? I said, don't worry about it. We didn't come thousands of miles not to perform, and we're covered. If people want to watch us and stand in the rain for an hour, they'll do it, which they did. Among those people that were watching, I know I'm talking so long, it's almost done. Among the people that were watching was an elderly man who just stood there the entire time. We were on the last song, and he disappeared. soon to return, he handed to the kids, he had gone home, which obviously was very nearby, collected his coins and his stamps, a precious collection for him, and he proceeded to hand those out to the kids and to me. And he said, "These are my life treasures. I'm old, you're young. Hopefully my dreams will live on in you, in youth. You are the hope of the future." So thank you. Thank you so much for this great honor. And the arts, I think, will forever be part of our hope for the future. Thank you.
Would the Hilton girls varsity basketball team please come forward? Also, President Jeffrey R. Adair and legislators Richard Yolovich and Rick Antelli. You guys can stand along the front if you want. Whereas the Hilton Lady Cadets varsity basketball team had not won a Section 5 championship since 2003. These girls played with heart and determination in order to clinch their first Section 5 Class AA championship in 8 years. The team was led by Coach Jeff Ickes, a strong lineup of talent. Throughout the season, their games led to the team finishing with an 18-4 record. And whereas the Lady Cadets have displayed their talent all season long, with inspiration and encouragement coming from Coach Ickes. The hard work put forth by these girls, along with a strong defense and an aggressive offense, led this team to victory. When it came time to step up, each member of the team did so, and the Lady Cadets were able to capture the section title for our community. And whereas the dedication this team demonstrated throughout their season is admirable. They have represented our community with great pride. The future is bright for these young athletes. And whereas lessons learned in athletics can often transfer into success later in life. And we are confident that the members of this team will continue to be model citizens for the Hilton community as well as Monroe County. Now therefore, we, Jeffrey R. Adair, President, Richard Yolovich, Legislator District 1, and Rick Antelli, Legislator District 7, on behalf of the entire Monroe County Legislature, do hereby recognize and congratulate the Hilton Girls Varsity Basketball Team on winning the Section 5 Class AA Basketball Championship. Congratulations.
Hello, my name is Mike Girizzi. I'm the athletic director. Speaking on behalf of Jeff Ickes, our head coach, who unfortunately could not be here tonight, and our assistant, Kurt Groutman. These young ladies, and so much about what was stated in that proclamation is true. They represent the Hilton community in such an outstanding manner. They represent them on the athletic field, they compete hard, and they represent the whole community. But also, I think of note, and is notable, is that these young ladies also do the job in the classroom. Not only was this team a Class AA Section 5 champion on the athletic field, they were also a New York State Scholar Athlete team recognition. They truly represent the word student athletes, and the Hilton Central School District is extremely proud of their accomplishments. Thank you.
Would the Fairport varsity wrestling team please come forward? Also, President Jeffrey R. Adair and legislators Michael G. Barker and Karen T. Hanna. can stand up here.
You can go right across the front.
Whereas this year the Fairport Red Raiders clinched their first sectional title in 32 years in the Section 5 Class AA Wrestling Championships. The Fairport Red Raiders, led by Section 5 Class AA Coach of the Year, Mike Cole, finished the season by winning 12 of its 15 dual meets. And whereas the Red Raiders have displayed their talent all season long with guidance coming from Coach Cole, they finished third at the Shenandoah tournament, finishing second in Oswego, and won the Webster tournament, placing 13 out of 15 wrestlers. And whereas, when it came to step up, each member of the team did so, and the Red Raiders were able to capture the sectional title. Fairport placed 16 out of 17 wrestlers, who all advanced to the state qualifier. In addition, 2 wrestlers, John Bird and John Cowden, won individual sectional championships. The Fairport Red Raiders ended the season ranking 12th in the state. And whereas the dedication and talent this team has showed throughout the season is admirable, each team member put forth a tremendous effort which led to their great achievement. Monroe County is proud to have this successful team representing our community. Now therefore we, Jeffrey R. Adair, President, Michael G. Barker, Vice President, and Kieran T. Hanna, Legislator District 18, on behalf of the entire Monroe County Legislature, do hereby recognize and congratulate the Fairport Varsity Wrestling Team on clinching the Section 5 Class AA Wrestling Championship. Congratulations.
I'd just like to say thank you to Legislator Hanna and Barker for inviting us, and I couldn't be more proud of this group of young men, the amount of time that we spent together working towards this goal, and all the little things that we did to come together at the end and win our first sectional title in quite some years was very special. This is a group I'll never forget, and I know they represented our community extremely well. I'm very proud of them. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Would the Brockport High School Electrathon Club please come forward? Also, President Jeffrey R. Adair and legislators Mike Rocco and Richard Yolovich. You guys can line right up in the front. Whereas the Brockport High School Electrathon Club took first place in the novice division during the Central New York Challenge at Watkins Glen International. The challenge was part of the Green Grand Prix, which brought together teams from across the Northeast to race alternative fuel vehicles that they created. And whereas Brockport High School's car was named It's Almost Friday in honor of Assistant Principal Dr. Tobias Ikesi, who is battling a major health issue. The group chose 077 as the car number because Dr. Ikesi's favorite number is 7, and it was the number of his childhood soccer jersey. And whereas the Electrathon Club was initiated at Brockport High School this year by teachers Craig Kuhn and Mark Palmer, the final project of the pre-engineering program was the construction of an energy-efficient vehicle. This project gave students the opportunity to explore the challenges and to succeed in the science, technology, engineering, math, STEM fields. And whereas the ingenuity and imagination displayed by all of the members is impressive and inspiring. These students, along with their mentors, have worked diligently to create this alternative fuel race car. Monroe County is proud to be the home of the creative and talented student inventors of the Brockport Club. We thank you for embracing science and innovation, and we look forward to your future endeavors. Now, therefore, we, Jeffrey R. Adair, President, Mike Rocco, Legislator District 2, and Richard Yolovich, Legislator District 1, on behalf of the entire Monroe County Legislature, do hereby recognize and congratulate the Brockport High School Electrothon Club on taking first place in the Novice Division in the Central New York Challenge. Congratulations.
It's hard to turn on the news without hearing about energy, whether it's gasoline prices or fuel shortages or alternative energy. These students in front of you are tackling a problem that is only going to get worse in the years to come. I think we've inspired a few of them to go into these fields and hopefully make a difference in this world. I couldn't be prouder of the students in front of you. So thanks for this opportunity.
Would representatives from the seniors program at the Charles Settlement House please come forward? Also, President Jeffrey R. Adair and Legislator Cynthia Cayley. Whereas the Charles Settlement House is a neighborhood-based human service agency that has operated in Rochester since 1917. 1 year after the Monroe County Legislature created the Office for the Aging in 1973, Charles Settlement House designed a seniors program to fill a growing need for senior services in the community. And whereas in 1997, Charles Settlement House opened a new community center at 71 Parkway in the former Joya Macaroni plant, becoming a home away from home for many seniors in the northwest quadrant of the city of Rochester. The seniors program staff works with family members, caregivers, the Office for the Aging, and several agencies to offer a wide range of services with an emphasis on maintaining physical health and keeping seniors active. And whereas the seniors program offers exercise programs, educational presentations about nutrition and health, craft classes, women's group, a falls prevention program, and many other activities 5 days a week. They also take seniors on many trips to different locations around the city and county, as well as grocery shopping and trips to area malls, and they diligently provide rides to regular medical appointments. And whereas the center acts as a conduit for socializing, health and wellness, and case management for seniors, the program has evolved over the years to serve a low-income and struggling population as well as integrating individuals with developmental disabilities. The seniors program at the Charles Settlement House has become a place that seniors in the Rochester community have come to rely on for nearly 40 years. Now, therefore, let it be known that we, Jeffrey R. Adair, President, and Cynthia Cayley, Legislator District 28, On behalf of the entire Monroe County Legislature, do hereby honor the Seniors Program at the Charles Settlement House for their dedication to the health, wellness, and vitality of the senior population in Monroe County. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Since 1917, Charles Settlement House has been serving residents of Northwest Rochester, particularly the neighborhoods around J Street and Lyle Avenue. We serve all ages, but our senior center is on Parkway near Ron Cohn's and the old Tent City buildings. Monroe County is a great partner, and we appreciate the Office for Aging and also for Legislator Cindy Cayley for nominating us for this proclamation. In the city, the people we serve at our senior center are poor and frail, many with physical and developmental disabilities and mental health issues. But they are living independently in no small part due to our program director, Roseanne Lackey, who's been at Charles House for over 30 years. Roseanne and her staff and volunteers help seniors deal with doctors and insurance. They take care of people who have no family. They've even been graveside at the county's Paupers Field from former clients of ours. The seniors come for meals, games, outings, and wellness programs, but they stay because they're treated as family. We thank you for the recognition, but more importantly ask that you continue to support the poor and frail elderly that depend on programs like the Senior Center at Charles Settlement House. Thank you.
Would the representatives from the 19th Ward Community Association please come forward? Also President Jeffrey R. Adair and Legislator Willie Joe Lightfoot. Whereas the 19th Ward Community Association, a volunteer-run nonprofit organization, is highly active and profoundly beneficial to one of the city of Rochester's most historic neighborhoods. Formed in 1965 during the progressive civil rights era, it is distinguished as one of the longest continuously operating community associations in the nation and has diligently served the interests of the 19th Ward residents for over 45 years. And whereas the mission of the 19th Ward Community Association is to create a conscious, diverse atmosphere where individual and cultural differences are celebrated and people come together to share a sense of community. It does so by strengthening the ties between neighbors through numerous cultural and community building activities. Among these are the annual 19th Ward Square Fair, the annual Winter Neighborhood Skating Party at Genesee Valley, and frequent candlelight dinners, house tours, and potluck picnics to foster and strengthen community friendships through food and lively conversation. And whereas, always having the interests and needs of its residents as a top priority, the 19th Ward Community Association energetically pursues ways to maintain and advance the dignity of the community. It's triumphantly defended the neighborhood against the blockbusting practices in the 1960s, and its members continue today to vigilantly address new developments in the 19th Ward. The association also takes grassroots action to prevent damaging effects of crime through its successful pack tax saturation walks. It also works to address safety hazards, reduce deterioration, and promote beauty in its neighborhoods by aiding the rehabilitation and selling of the city's unique and historical homes. And whereas the 19th Ward Community Association goes beyond its borders to advance the well-being not only of its neighbors, but of the Rochester community as a whole. With its celebrated Urban by Choice slogan and its monthly Update 19 publication, it nobly instills pride and recognition in its neighborhood. The 19th Ward Community Association truly embodies the rich heritage and diversity of its extraordinary community members. Now, therefore, let it be known that we, Jeffrey R. Adair, President, and Willie Joe Lightfoot, Legislator, District 27, on behalf of the entire Monroe County Legislature, do hereby honor the 19th Ward Community Association for more than 45 years of exemplary service to Rochester's 19th Ward neighborhood. Congratulations.
Thank you, Willie Joe and President Dare and Monroe County Executive Maggie Brooks. Thank you for the proclamation today. The 19th Ward Association is the longest running, longest continuously operating neighborhood association in the United States. And also the 19th Ward is the largest neighborhood in the city of Rochester. We have over 22,000 residents. And I consider inviting all 22,000 residents to stand here today, but I was advised by the fire department that that would have exceeded the capacity of the room, so I did not do that. But seriously, we are able to achieve what we do as a volunteer organization with a strong support from not just the city of Rochester, but also Monroe County. So I definitely want to thank all of our legislators and the entire Monroe County government for the support that they have shown us throughout the years, and we will work together in the future to improve our city neighborhoods. Thank you.
We will now recess for the purpose of holding two public hearings. I declare open the public hearing on resolution intro number 163 of 2011, entitled Amending the Monroe County Charter Regarding Legislative Work Program Reform.
There are no speakers registered for this hearing.
There being none, I declare this public hearing closed. I declare open the public hearing on resolution intro number 166 of 2011, entitled Redistricting Disruptive Protest Activities at Funeral-Related Events.
There is one speaker registered for this hearing. Would Mr. Thomas Gregory please come forward?
I believe that the view I'm going to express is somewhat unpopular, given the events of the past where we've had bad taste, where individuals protest and interrupt the passing of a young man or young woman, a young military man or woman, at a funeral event. But I think one thing we have to think about, that laws shouldn't be made to basically discourage bad taste, especially when the people showing such bad taste constitute such a small minority of the population of this great nation. Bottom line is that, well, all the spirit behind this law, which is going to pass tonight, I think we all know that. Well, the spirit is so full of patriotism and correctitude, it seems inappropriate. You can't legislate against bad taste without actually affecting the lives of men and women like sitting in this audience tonight or in this chamber tonight who would never think of doing such a thing. I don't think the young men or the young women that I've been fortunate to help go down to Parris Island have done so, want to serve to suppress that one huge thing that makes us different than any country in the world: freedom of speech. Freedom of speech, First Amendment. First thing that our founders thought about was the fact they wanted us to be able to say what we're going to say. And back in those days, a lot of it had to do with religion. But the truth is freedom of speech, which I think is a huge, huge thing that we need to go out of our way to protect. Like I said, the majority of people in this country would never think of doing something as heinous as protesting against the death of or using that event to protest against a war, but it's just not a good law. And I think the most of the people who are going to be speaking, if anyone else speaks in the legislature tonight against this law, their passage of this law, is because of their concern about that First Amendment, which should be very precious to all of us. Thank you.
No other speakers?
No more speakers.
I declare this public hearing closed and reconvene the June 14, 2011 meeting of the Monroe County Legislature. At this time, there are no formal committee reports scheduled for this evening. We will now hold a public forum. We have several speakers registered to address the legislature. Madam Clerk.
Please use the center aisle when your name is called and be prepared to address the legislature. Each speaker will have 2 minutes, and we ask that you conclude when the timer sounds, and we thank you for your cooperation. Our first speaker will be Mary Murner. Please come forward.
As stated, my name is Mary Murner. I work for the Department of Environmental Services. I've been there almost 32 years in this fall. And I work at the Van Laer Treatment Plant, but where I work specifically is the Environmental Laboratory. Initially, when I first started working, we provided an essential service by doing the monitoring for the 3 treatment plants, Van Laer, Northwest Quadrant, and GCO, Gates Charlie Ogden. Around 2001, 2002, we combined with the environmental health labs, and at that time, we increased our services to the county. Now, we not only do the monitoring for the treatment plants, we analyze all the drinking water in the county to make sure it's good. We analyze wells. We analyze non-community drinking sources. We analyze the beaches to see that they're fit for swimming in the summer and help with the decision on closing them. We analyze the streams, the bay, the river, as well as many other projects. We do work with local communities, high schools, and colleges when they want to do a special monitoring project. We'll do extra sampling for them. We do have a host of added value services that we provide to the community. So I just wanted to be a representative of the hardworking members of the Monroe County workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker. No. This concludes the public forum.
At this point, I'm taking agenda items number 32 and 33, matter of urgency, out of the regular agenda order. Will the clerk please read the items?
Item number 32, referral 11-0180.
Moved by legislator Daniele, second by legislator Yolovich. Is there any discussion at this time? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 33, referral 11-0181, requesting the Assembly.
Moved by legislator Daniele, second by legislator Yolovich. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there's no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Item carries. Yes,
Please,
sir.
just a short break so the clerk and the county executive can sign these, and we can get these to Albany.
Thank you. I was going to take a short break. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. At this time, I'd like to call for a short recess so that we can sign these and get them to Albany. Brett, we okay? Well set? I am now going to call an end to our recess, and I'm going to return back to our agenda. We will now proceed with the considerations of local law. Will the clerk please read the first item on the agenda?
Item number 1, referral 11-100, providing.
Moved by Legislator Yolovich, second by Legislator Howland. This is to lift from the table. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Item number 2, referral 11-100, providing that local law.
Moved by Legislator Yolovich, second by Legislator Howland. This is a motion to adopt. Any Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to commend you for introducing this piece of legislation. A couple months ago when we discussed this at the Agenda Charter Committee, you indicated you'd done sort of a review of the past, I don't know, however many years of this legislature's use of the work plan, and found at best we had a pretty spotty record. And for that reason, you decided to come up with a local law that would sort of codify that we do this on a regular basis at a prescribed time, and that you make it more of a business-like framework. And that's something that I commend you for. I also like that you move the date up from when this would be introduced from April to the beginning of the year. However, as I also introduced or mentioned at that committee meeting, there were a couple aspects of it that I'd like to see changed. You indicated a possibility of working on those at that time, and so for that reason, I'd like to introduce an amendment tonight that will be passed out, and there is one correction as I'll read it right now. In the very first line, it says, "Be it moved that agenda item number 4 is written on the sheet." I'd just like to make sure that we change that to number 2. But in essence, this amendment does two things that I think would improve this local law. The first is to take it from being something...
Can I get a second on it, please?
Sure. May I have a second?
Can I get a second on it, please?
Second. Thank you, Willie.
Second by Legislator.
And
Proceed.
the two things that this is not the one. The two things this would do would be to change it from something that will be now done in 2 years, every 2 years, to something that's done annually. I believe we have more than enough to do in this body that warrants doing a work plan every year as is currently prescribed in the Charter, and that should not be changed. And secondly, I think one of the things we talked about was standardizing the sections that are included in the work plan to some of the most important functions of county government. And therefore, I list them in this local law, those being jobs, spending, taxes, ethics, public safety, human services, and oversight of public entities. I believe these two simple changes make this a more effective law that will help us and future legislative bodies create work plans that can be functional, useful documents. So for that reason, I introduce this amendment and ask my colleagues to support it.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I have a motion made and a second by Legislator O'Brien, as I see on the bottom of the page. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing there's no discussion, I'll move to a roll call vote.
Dr.
On the
Quattro?
amendment.
Mr. O'Brien? Ms. Andrews? Mr. Antelli? Mr. Barker? Mr. Baroth? Mr. Beebe? Mr. Cassetti? Mr. Colby? Mr. Daniele? Mrs. Draw? Mr. Eckel? Mr. Esposito? Mr. Gamble? Mr. Gamina? Mr. Haney? Mr. Hanna? Mr. Hyder? Mr. Howland? Ms. Kaylee? Mr. Lee? Mr. Lightfoot? Mr. Monero? Mr. McCann? Mr. Rocco? Mr. Tucciarello? Mrs. Valerio? Mr. Yolovich? And President Adair.
No.
1316 amendment fails.
Back to the main motion now. Is there any other discussion? Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have before us a local law related to the work plan. When you introduced this a couple months ago, there was also a second referral that was an actual work plan for this year. And I was curious to know why that is not on the agenda this evening.
Legislator Esposito, I believe it was tabled in last month in, yes, it was tabled at the last legislature, at full ledge, correct. Yeah.
Right. Is there a reason we're not bringing it off the table in conjunction with the same time as this local law?
Not at this time, no, there isn't.
Is it your intention to bring it back at some point?
I would love to bring it back at some time, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Legislator Haney.
Mr. President, for the reasons cited by Legislator Esposito in offering the amendment, I intend to vote against the local law. I think while there are elements of it that are commendable, I think going to a 2-year cycle and having a legislative work plan is inappropriate. And because the local law changes the charter from a 1-year to a 2-year cycle, I will be voting against it. There's enough important matters that this body ought to be considering that we should have an annual work plan rather than a biannual work plan.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Seeing there's none, I'll move to a roll call vote.
Dr. Quattro. Yes. Mr. O'Brien. No. Ms. Andrews. No. Mr. Antelli. No. Mr. Barker. Yes. Mr. Baroth. No. Mr. Beebe. No. Mr. Cassetti. Yes. Mr. Colby. Yes. Mr. Daniele. Yes. Mrs. Straw. Yes. Mr. Eckel. No. Mr. Esposito. No. Mr. Gamble. Mr. Gamina. Mr. Haney. Mr. Hanna. Mr. Hyder. Mr. Howland. Ms. Cayley. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Monero. Mr. McCann. Mr. Rocco. Mr. Tucciarello. Mrs. Valerio. Mr. Yolovich. President Adair.
Yes.
1613 passes.
Next item, please.
Item number 3, referral 11-106, providing that local law number 166 of 2011.
Moved by Legislator Beebe, seconded by Legislator Howland. This is to lift from the table. All in favor? Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 4, referral 11-106, providing that local law, intro number 166.
Moved by Legislator Beebe and moved also by Legislator Yolovich, seconded by Legislator Howland. Is there any discussion at this point? Legislator Beebe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. As any member who was at the Agenda Charter Committee knows that I went into great length and detail in regards to this matter. Currently on the books, there's 43 states that have this similar law. None in New York State. There is one on the floor in the state, but it has not been passed yet. Also have 4 other counties that have enacted this local law. There's 2 main reasons why I have decided to submit this to this legislature here in Monroe County. One of them was the Supreme Court ruling in March with the Westboro Baptist Church, Phelps versus Snyder, and where the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the church as far as free speech goes, 8-1. However, though, Chief Justice Roberts did say that it might be in the best interest of municipalities to think about passing legislation in regards to barrier, restricted area during military funerals. The second reason that I decided to come forward with this is when Congressman Gifford's assassination attempt occurred in Arizona, there was also a 9-year-old girl, Christina Green, that died. During the funeral, the Westboro Baptist Church took it upon themselves to make sure that they were there, saying that it was God's will that she died. So I decided that we needed to submit this type of law here in Monroe County. We are not hidden from any hate groups at all. We are not protected by it. A good example was back in 2006 over in town of Brighton with a soldier military funeral there. This church planned on being there, but fortunately for the Patriot Guard riders and other people, took it upon themselves to protect the family and the friends to make sure that this funeral went through without any problems. That's why I included also, besides military funerals, which there's 3 of us here on this floor that have served in the military, Legislator Yolovich and Legislator Lightfoot and myself. We know how important it is to take it upon anybody, brothers and sisters, to go and serve in this country and ultimately give the supreme sacrifice of your life. So, but I also, in regards to the girl out in Arizona, I felt it was necessary also to protect private funerals as well as Shivas, and also, having been a former firefighter, I wanted to make sure that our police and fire department brothers and sisters were protected as well in this law. That's why it encompasses all types of funerals, primarily the military funerals. And the restrictions that we have placed, some people have felt that it might be a little extreme. The 1,000-foot barrier, we had discussed this. There are several other laws out there through states and the counties that have enacted the same similar barrier, and we felt it would be appropriate to set that up. In my press conference, I quoted saying, while we certainly believe in the right of free speech, we also believe that families should be allowed to grieve the loss of a loved one without facing protesters demeaning the loved one's life. The day I had the press conference, I had gotten over the news wire that 3 soldiers from the 10th Mountain Division, based here in Watertown, New York at Fort Drum, had been killed in Afghanistan. Briefly, the 3 gentlemen were 22-year-old Joel Ramirez, he was from Texas. Sergeant Charles Warren from Texas, also was a Purple Heart recipient. And lastly, Specialist Paul Atim from Wisconsin, 27 years old. The thing about Paul is that he was originally from Guyana. He came to this country to become a U.S. citizen and ultimately decided to join the military and gave the ultimate sacrifice. It's been interesting to read about this church, but there are other groups out there we know of. But we want to protect our citizens here, and I certainly could never fathom all the funerals I've been to and attended and served on, militarily as well as fire medically. I could never comprehend this types of acts happening to disrupt a funeral of any kind. And that's why this local law is out here on the floor tonight. I want to thank the county attorney. When we initially submitted this law, it needed some beefing up and some technical things taken care of, and I appreciate that. I want to thank the caucus and the staff here for following through with it. I've reached out to all the VFWs, the Legions, and other organizations here in the county, and it's been well received that we go through with this. Lastly, I want to thank, I think he's become a good friend of mine, Dick Yolovich. I appreciate his help, his candor, and certainly hope they would go through with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Seeing none, I'll move to, I'm sorry, Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very difficult vote to cast this evening, and so I rise to explain my vote. I certainly believe that people should be free to mourn the loss of their loved ones in the way which they wish to do without being disturbed. And I have nothing but the utmost of respect for servicemen and women of our country and for what they're willing to sacrifice for our freedoms. And one of those freedoms that they defend is the right of free speech protected by the First Amendment. Speech on matters of public concern receives the highest level of First Amendment protection possible. The U.S. Supreme Court has said that in public debate, citizens must tolerate insulting, even outrageous speech in order to provide adequate breathing space to the freedoms protected by the First Amendment. This funeral protest law, as amended, establishes a 1,000-foot barrier around funeral-related events for an hour before and after the event and during the event. It prohibits demonstrations such as pickets or protests, including but not limited to speech, oration, display of signs, with or without noise accompanying them. In essence, it prohibits peaceful demonstrations within 1,000 feet of a funeral. 1,000 feet, just so we keep it in our mind, is approximately the length of 3 football fields. Funeral protest laws are not new. The federal government actually does have 2 laws, I believe. The first prohibits protests 150 feet for an hour before or after a military funeral that occurs in a cemetery under the control of the National Cemetery Administration or Arlington National Cemetery. It also prohibits activities within 300 feet that willfully impede access to or egress from the funeral-related event. The second federal law imposes the same restrictions on any military funeral performed anywhere in the country, even if not within a federal cemetery. So there is clearly, obviously, a law already on the books specifically protecting families mourning at the loss at a military funeral. In order to impose a restriction on free speech in public areas, the Supreme Court has held the restriction must be narrowly drawn to meet the government's interests and leave open ample alternatives for communication. If we look at the Supreme Court's history in decisions, especially regarding buffer zones, it's quite telling how they've ruled in terms of the constitutionality of various buffer zones. In one case, the court found unconstitutional a law prohibiting the display of signs within 500 feet of an embassy, signs that tended to bring the foreign embassy into, quote, public odium or public disrepute. In another case, the Supreme Court ruled unconstitutional a law banning picketing and demonstrations within 300 feet of the homes of medical clinic staff because the proposed buffer zone was too broad, and by being too broad could in fact prohibit general marching through a residential neighborhood and other sorts of picketing. The court has also ruled unconstitutional a buffer zone that prohibited uninvited protesters within 300 feet of a medical clinic because, quote, a prohibition on peaceful, uninvited approaches restricted speech simply because it was outrageous or insulting. However, the court has upheld some buffer zones. For example, it upheld a 36-foot buffer zone around the entrance to a health clinic because the buffer zone was designed to protect against protesters interfering with access to that clinic. This room, if we look around, is probably wider than 36 feet. The court has also upheld a 15-foot buffer zone around a medical clinic doorway, driveway, and driveway entrance, but again allowed protesters to be right at that 15-foot margin as people were entering the medical clinic. Again, the court has upheld a law that banned knowingly approaching another person within an 8-foot buffer zone walking into a medical clinic for the purpose of protesting, leafletting, or engaging in oral protest or counseling as the person entered the clinic. In essence, a few of the buffer zones that have been upheld have been quite small, 8 foot, 15 feet, 36 feet. These are some of the allowable buffer zones. Court decisions, in essence, allow protesters to talk to insult, to offend, to yell at, to certainly demonstrate to me, to you, to any of us as we enter a medical clinic. And they only keep them at arm's length away, and certainly the protests are allowed within plain view. Courts have allowed only minimal restrictions because that's what free speech is about. I know this is hard, and we want to be able to protect families who are mourning. We can certainly limit protesters from the immediate site of the funeral, because protesters have no free speech right to attend the funeral. We can limit intentionally noisy or disruptive protests because they can cause an actual disruption to the funeral. And perhaps we could tailor a more narrow restriction. But I don't see how this law, as well-intentioned as it is, that restricts speech by the length of 3 football fields, something that other buffer zones have been much smaller, which have been allowed and deemed constitutional. I don't see how this would pass that test. I truly mean no disrespect, and I am insulted and offended by a lot of speech that we do protect, but I do certainly believe in the right of free speech. And as the Supreme Court wrote, the function of free speech under our system of government is to invite dispute. There is no room under our Constitution for a more restrictive view. For the alternative would lead to the standardization of ideas, either by legislatures, courts, or the dominant political or community groups. And while I respect certainly the service that every servicewoman or man has given this country, including the 3 legislators in the room and anyone in the audience and in the administration, this evening I will be voting against the proposed law. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Baroth.
These microphones. Thank you, Mr. President. It's with sadness I'm standing here today. We call ourselves honorable, and we are honorable. Those who put this proposed law forth and are going to support it are doing so with honor. Those who are opposing it, there may be a few, also, I believe, doing so with honor. I think we have earned that title, and I think today we're showing that. But I stand here with sadness because I, too, am forced by my conscience to vote no on this, although I'm appalled that I must do so. And the reason being is that I, too, wish to protect others. And I, too, frankly, I think some of us, want to strike back at this particular church. But like any representative of our government, at the state level, national level, and yes, even at the county level, we wield a lot of power. We can cause people to be imprisoned. We can cause people to be fined, to be forced to work against their will. We can cause them to be publicly shamed. We can take licenses away from them. We can do many things to them. And we normally do so with good intent and good honor. And I recognize that this is the case right now, that we wish to do so in honor. But what we're really doing is we're choosing to do so in a very broad way. 3 football fields, you think about that. If there happened to be a funeral home across the street, you could not have a protest downtown within nearly a square mile. That's very, very broad. It's too broad. And so with regret, I have to not support this bill and vote against it. And I do that with sadness because, frankly, I, too, am appalled by what we see each day. And I'm saddened that there are those individuals out there that would take advantage of us. And yes, they are taking advantage of us. But we wield such power, we must be very careful and restrained when we wield it. Because many people can get bruised, both those we wish to aim it at and those who are just bystanders. Or perhaps 5 years from now we decide another group needs to be protected. Or another event needs to be protected. And there's precedent set. So with regret, I must vote against this bill.
Thank you, Legislator Baroth. Is there any other discussion at this? Legislator Cayley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to make this brief because I can't talk much anyways. But I respect what everyone has said tonight, and there are parts of me that has trouble with limiting, with the limitations of the 1,000 feet extension of space. But I will remind people that their speech is not being limited. It's where they stand. That's what's being limited. And I have no problem limiting where they stand if it were my son or my daughter that were being buried. I have no problem at all. Their speech is not being limited, just where they stand.
Thank you, Legislator Cayley. Is there any other discussion at this time? I'll move to a roll call vote.
Dr. Quattro. Yes. Mr. O'Brien. Yes. Ms. Andrews. Mr. Antelli? Mr. Barker? Mr. Broth? Mr. Beebe? Mr. Cassetti? Mr. Colby? Mr. Daniele? Mrs. Straw? Mr. Eckel? Mr. Esposito? Mr. Gamble? Mr. Gamina? Mr. Haney? Mr. Hanna? Mr. Hyder? Mr. Howland? Ms. Kaylee? Mr. Lee? Mr. Lightfoot? Mr. Monero? Mr. McCann? Mr. Rocco? Mr. Tucciarello? Mrs. Valerio? Mr. Yolovich? President Adair?
Yes.
27-2, motion passes.
We will now continue with the considerations of motions, resolutions, and notices. Will the clerk please read Legislator Quattro?
Mr. President, without objection from my friend Mr. O'Brien, I'd like to move the balance of the agenda.
Is there any discussion to that? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. Hang on. Rule number 1. Don't ever cross in front of the path of a legislator and a president during a meeting. Rule number 2 is the legislators have unfinished business, and I did hear one over on this side. Legislator Haney, the floor is yours.
Golly, Mr. President, it's only 20 after 7, and the troops are really restless tonight.
It must be the air conditioning we have going in here, or lack of.
Just one quick question, Mr. President. We received tonight on our desk the 2010 capital budget report, which, of course, is important as we proceed at our next meeting with the consideration of the CIP program. The report, however, as I understand it, only includes those capital funds to which appropriations were added in the year 2010. Is that correct?
Through the President, that is correct, yes.
Before our next meeting, to really be able to evaluate the CIP, Mr. President, I would request a listing of all the open capital projects because there are some, for example, planning and feasibility for which there are open accounts which aren't showing here. And before we get to our next meeting, I would appreciate receiving a listing of all open capital projects. We don't need all the pages of detail in the back, just a listing that would show what the unexpended, unencumbered balances of all open capital funds are.
Through the President, we will attempt to provide that before the next legislature meeting.
Okay, is there any other unfinished business? If not, Dr. Quattro.
And I move this honorable body stands adjourned until July 12th, 2011 at 6 p.m.
We are adjourned.